I never thought much about Jake's mother. At least, not in the way I was starting to now. Olivia had always been there, effortlessly graceful, the kind of woman who could make anyone feel at home with just a smile. She was warm, confident, and carried herself with the quiet assurance of someone who had seen enough of life to know what mattered. I had spent countless afternoons at Jake's house, raiding the fridge, playing video games, talking about meaningless things. Olivia was just a background presence, occasionally teasing us for being lazy or offering snacks before disappearing into her own world. But one evening, something shifted. Jake and I were sprawled on the couch, half watching a movie when he got a text. "I gotta run out for an hour. Mom's car is acting up, and she needs a ride from the repair shop. You good to hang?" "Yeah, no problem," I said, barely looking up. Jake grabbed his keys and left, leaving me alone in the house. A few minutes later, Olivia walked in, drying her hands on a dish towel. "He left you here to fend for yourself, huh?" she said with a small smile. I chuckled. "I think I'll survive." She sat across from me, her eyes sharp but kind. "You and Jake have been friends forever." "Since middle school," I nodded. She leaned back, studying me in a way that made my skin warm. "You've changed a lot. More serious now. More mature." I wasn't sure how to respond. No one had ever looked at me like that before, like they were really seeing me. I tried to play it off. "Yeah, well, college will do that to you." She tilted her head, as if considering something. "Not just college," she murmured. A silence settled between us, comfortable yet charged. I noticed, maybe for the first time, the way her dark hair framed her face, the way her lips curved slightly, as if holding back a secret. The air felt heavier. Before I could overthink it, Jake's voice rang out from the driveway. "I'm back." Olivia stood quickly, smoothing her hands over her shirt, and the moment, if it had been a moment, was gone. Jake walked in, oblivious, tossing his keys on the counter. "Dude, you hungry?" I blinked, still feeling the echo of something I couldn't quite name. "Yeah," I said, but my mind was elsewhere. As the night went on, I caught Olivia glancing at me once or twice, a flicker of something unreadable in her expression. And for the first time, I wondered if I had imagined it all, or if something between us had just begun. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I had imagined the way Olivia looked at me, the way her voice had softened when she spoke. But the thought of her lingered, slipping into my mind at the most unexpected moments. Then she texted me. At first, it was innocent, small messages about Jake, a funny remark about something I'd said. But soon, the conversations stretched longer. She asked about my classes, my plans for the future. I found myself waiting for her messages, rereading them before I replied. One evening, as I was scrolling through my phone, a new message appeared. "Olivia, are you free? Jake's out for a while." I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. The invitation was casual, yet something about it felt different. I hesitated for only a moment before replying. "Yeah, I'll come over." When I arrived, Olivia was waiting at the door, dressed in a loose-knit sweater and jeans. She smiled, stepping aside to let me in. The house was quiet, the only sound the faint hum of the dishwasher in the kitchen. "Wine," she offered, already pouring 2 glasses before I could answer. I took a sip, settling onto the couch beside her. We talked, just like before, easy, natural. But there was something unspoken hanging in the air, something neither of us dared to acknowledge. She tilted her head, studying me with that same unreadable expression. "You've grown into such an incredible young man, Alex." Her voice was soft, thoughtful. I swallowed, my fingers tightening around the glass. "You always say that." "Because it's true." Her lips curved slightly. "You're different from Jake's other friends. More thoughtful. More aware." My throat felt dry. Aware of what? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached out, her fingers grazing mine where they rested on the couch. It was the smallest touch, but it sent a shiver through me. I should have pulled away. I should have said something to break the tension. But I didn't. She leaned in, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath. "Alex." Her name was on my lips, but before I could speak, She closed the space between us. Her lips brushed mine, featherlight, hesitant, testing. The world narrowed to that single point of contact. Then, just as quickly, she pulled away, her eyes searching mine. "We shouldn't," she whispered. I exhaled shakily. "I know." But neither of us moved. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway shattered the moment. Olivia stood quickly, smoothing her sweater, as if nothing had happened. "Jake's home," she murmured. I nodded, my heart still pounding. As I walked out the door, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Days passed, but the moment with Olivia lingered like an echo I couldn't silence. The way her lips had brushed mine, the way she had looked at me, like she was fighting the same impossible pull. Then she called. Her voice was quieter than usual. "Are you alone?" I glanced around my empty apartment. "Yeah." A pause. Then, barely above a whisper, "Come over." My heart pounded. There was no pretense this time. No mention of Jake. No excuse to justify why she wanted me there. I didn't ask questions. I just grabbed my keys and left. By the time I arrived, the house was dimly lit, the evening air thick with summer heat. Olivia opened the door without a word, stepping aside as I entered. She smelled of vanilla and something soft, something undeniably her. I barely had time to register the moment before she reached for me, fingers curling around the fabric of my shirt. Her eyes searched mine, one last hesitation flickering behind them. But I had already made my choice. I closed the space between us. The kiss wasn't hesitant this time. It was slow, deep, filled with the weight of everything we had been holding back. Her hands moved to my face, tracing the contours of my jaw, as if memorizing me in that moment. Somewhere between breathless whispers and tangled limbs, we found our way to her bedroom. The world outside disappeared. The only thing that mattered was the warmth of her skin against mine, the way she sighed my name like it belonged to her. Time blurred. Afterward, we lay tangled together, her head resting against my chest, her fingertips drawing lazy circles on my skin. The silence between us wasn't heavy. It was something softer, something that didn't need words. "I never meant for this to happen," she murmured. I ran a hand through her hair. "Do you regret it?" She exhaled, her breath warm against my skin. "No," she admitted, "but I don't know where we go from here." Neither did I. I traced a line down her arm, committing every detail to memory. I knew this couldn't last. But for tonight, for this moment, none of that mattered. She tilted her head, pressing one last kiss to my shoulder before whispering, "Stay, just a little longer." And so I did. The morning light crept through the curtains, casting golden lines across Olivia's bare shoulder. She stirred beside me, eyes fluttering open as reality seeped in. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The warmth of the night still lingered, but the weight of the morning pressed against it, threatening to pull us apart. I traced a fingertip along her arm. "What now?" she sighed, turning onto her side to face me. Her expression was unreadable, but her fingers still rested against my chest, as if reluctant to let go. "I don't know." The answer settled between us like an unspoken truth. We had crossed a line that couldn't be erased. And yet, in this quiet space, it still felt like we were the only two people in the world. I wanted to tell her that I didn't care about the rules, that I'd stay as long as she'd have me. But before I could speak, she glanced at the clock and sat up. "Jake will be home soon," she murmured, pulling the sheet around her. I nodded, the reality of our situation sinking in. This wasn't some love story with a perfect ending. No matter how much I wanted to stay, I knew I couldn't. She turned to me, hesitation flickering across her face. "Alex." I knew what she was about to say. That this was dangerous. That we couldn't keep doing this. That whatever had happened between us had to stay in the shadows of last night. I swallowed hard, forcing a small smile. "I get it." Her lips parted, as if to argue, but then she simply nodded. I dressed in silence, every movement feeling heavier than it should. When I reached the door, I turned back. She stood in the center of the room, arms wrapped around herself, watching me with something close to regret. You don't have to say it, I told her. I'll remember this always. Her smile was bittersweet. Me too. Then I walked out. As I stepped into the sunlight, the cool morning air stung against my skin. I didn't look back, I couldn't. I didn't know what would happen now. Maybe we'd pretend this never happened. Maybe she'd avoid me. Or maybe we'd steal another moment when the loneliness became too much. Or maybe, just maybe, this was the kind of love that wasn't meant to last but would never truly fade. Either way, I knew one thing for sure. I would never be the same again.